Welcome everyone to the session The Value of OMOP on Fire by Tia Pope. Just a quick note, this session is pre-recorded, so we'll just play the video first. After that, there's the live Q&A session. So for the live Q&A session, please post as many questions as possible. No question is too stupid to ask, as the Wolva app says as well. So please feel free to ask anything you're unsure about. For now, enjoy the video.
The value of OMOP on FHIR. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tia, the Director of Health Interoperability within the Center for Health Analytics and Informatics at GTRI. This session, I will be providing you with a brief overview of this amazing tool called OMOP on FHIR that we've built and made available to the public. And for those of you already aware of what OMOP on FHIR is, I would like to provide you with an update on features and upgrades. For those of you who are new to OMOP, OMOP is a common data model created by Odyssey. It's meant to formalize the transformation of data from various data sources into a common format. This common data model serves as a medium for a more powerful way to analyze clinical data. So by converting a database over to OMOP, you'll create a solid core for data harmonization and processing. While here at DevDays, you've probably learned a ton about FHIR and the power it has in dealing with patient data. So why in the world would we need to talk about OMOP? Well, let's just say that OMOP is the peanut butter to FHIR's jelly, or vice versa, depending on which one you like best. FHIR is an interoperability standard that formalizes the way that health data can be exchanged. Its API capabilities have been praised and made the standard of choice by the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology in the US earlier this year. FHIR is patient-centric and is well suited for use cases that break down to the patient level. And to make it sweeter, it's an open source tool backed by a wonderful community, hence the FHIR DevDays. The OMOP CDM is also open source and is backed by a wonderful community as well within the Odyssey network. They built OMOP so that it can accommodate all sorts of health-related data, as I mentioned before, in the form of a common data model. This was done to provide the community and the world with a medium to perform collaborative research worldwide. Unlike FHIR, out of the box, OMOP is well suited for population-based use cases, such as large-scale analytics, which brings me to my next point. Once you put these two together, you have a powerful tool that can tackle data from both the population level all the way to a specific patient. The value comes when you have common needs or use cases, such as building a predictive model for a large scale of patients, and then building an app that runs the model against those patients to prevent, say, an adverse event, or by pulling in wearable data from a FHIR server to OMOP for deeper analysis on a population level. Since we have these two great standards, why wouldn't we put them together to make an even greater solution in just about any environment? The bread here being your environment or use case. At a high level, here's the basic makeup of OMOP on FHIR. It is built using your choice of FHIR and OMOP with the flexibility to customize your database of choice. OMOP on FHIR currently supports DSTU2 all the way up to release 4 for FHIR, and we're working towards upgrading OMOP to version 6. The mappings between the two standards is what ties them together. As you can see here, the mappings are not one-to-one. FHIR resources and other elements are manually mapped to the OMOP data schema and vice versa. This is especially true when use cases deal with special profiles like EICRs or extensions. Once the mappings are in place, OMOP on FHIR supports the read and write capability as needed from FHIR to OMOP, as well as from OMOP to FHIR. And just when you thought it couldn't get any better, OMOP on FHIR also supports smart technology for those use cases that need to fit into many different clinical systems like EHRs, data warehouses, or patient portals. Smart provides UX integration capabilities for app creation for clinicians, researchers, and patients. It also provides the security layers needed to make it easier to limit data where necessary and provide a medium like single sign-on for authorizing users. So now that you know what it is, are you ready to put OMOP on FHIR to use? Either way, here's an example of a use case where we help the U.S. Food and Drug Administration with adverse event reporting using OMOP on FHIR. The FDA team needed assistance with getting the patient data into the HL7 Individual Case Safety Report, or ICSR, in XML format. To help them to complete this task, we created an asynchronous proof of concept that could automatically generate XML data based on the ICSR format. In the proof of concept, the patient data is first added to the OMOP database, which enables us to utilize Odyssey's web-based tool called Atlas to build a cohort that's specific to this use case. Once the cohort is built, the Atlas API is used to get the list of patients. This information is pulled into our local database, then submitted to the case manager. We're able to avoid duplicates by only adding new patients and updating existing ones. Behind the scenes, the ICSR data extractor is asking for updates via API, where the case manager only sends new patient IDs. From there, we use a CQL engine to define what resources we want to retrieve from the FHIR server for the adverse events. So the CQL uses the list of patient IDs to build a FHIR query to get the data from the FHIR server. The result is a generated ICSR in XML format. As mentioned before, we're currently working towards OMOP version 6. However, we will still continue to support versions 5.2 and 5.3. We also intend on having more cloud capabilities as we get SQL render up and going. Bidirectional read and write testing is well underway for each of the version combinations, and we're anticipating the additional support of more resources. Please keep on the lookout for our updated site, which will host updated documentation to complement the versioning and the changes. We also intend on having guided tutorials, training, and support for bulk FHIR builds. If you have any use cases you would like to run by us, please feel free to reach out. Let us know how we can support you. If you would like to contribute, feel free to check out our GitHub or email me at the email address listed here. Or you can make a request using the URL link below. Thank you so much for joining the Value of OMOP on FHIR session. I look forward to connecting with you in the future. Happy Dev Days.
Tia, thank you very much for your presentation. It was a good 7.5 minutes. A lot of information in that short time period. I'm sure that there are some parts you might want to elaborate on a bit. Maybe you want to share your screen so we can do that. And then we just, you can explain a bit more. And once the questions start coming in, I will notify you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Give me just a second to share my screen here.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to hop back a bit. Let's go here. Just for a second on the mappings. I didn't get a chance to add it to the slide deck, but I wanted to go over some of the resources that we actually support currently with OMOP on FHIR, and just kind of talk a little bit about some of the features that or not features, but the resources that we're intending to add this coming year. So just to go down a list, to kind of put them in alphabetical order here, we have our condition, document resource, device, device use statement, encounter, medication request, medication statement procedure, observation, organization, patient, practitioner, procedure. And we have medication, but it's read only. The mappings only go from OMOP to FHIR, just because it's a little bit more complex in terms of going the opposite direction. Because the way that we build out the resources as well as other components of OMOP on FHIR are based on funding, we tend to put a pin in the different resources until we get another project that needs those specific mappings. So in the future, we have some projects scheduled, and a couple of the resources that we found very useful, considering now we're in a global pandemic and the need is there. And that's for the search parameter, just exploring that resource a little bit more to see how we can do some custom mappings in OMOP for some, more unique use cases. We have the allergy resource, which is pretty, crystal clear, but the mappings isn't going to be. We're going to take some time to kind of noodle on that to see what we can do. I know there's some folks in the community trying to figure out how to utilize that resource in that way as well. The same goes for immunization. And we also have a project, a really big project that is focused on questionnaire data and just working on determining which is most appropriate in terms of mapping some form data that is needed to go through OMOP on FHIR. So I wanted to touch base there. Oh,
All right,
sorry.
if I can interrupt you for, there are 2 questions that came in, so we
Sure.
could do them now. Is there a library for converting OMOP to FHIR and / or vice versa?
Yes, it's located in the GitHub page, and there should be an updated link there to like a Google spreadsheet that also like lists out the mappings one by one to kind of show you how that behavior functions. As I mentioned in the last piece, there are a couple of mappings that we haven't gotten to update yet, but those are underway as well this coming year. And just in case you're wondering as well, you can map between the different versions of OMOP and FHIR. So if you say wanted to use OMOP version 5.3 as well as FHIR release 4, you could do that, or vice versa. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, all right, great. A good thing to keep in mind indeed. Then the second question, could the AE report come directly from FHIR without mapping to OMOP CDM? Or what's the value add for using OMOP?
Could you repeat that question?
Yeah, of course. Could the AE report come directly from FHIR without mapping to OMOP CDM? What's the value add for using OMOP?
Yes, so you're actually utilizing, okay, so Odyssey has a application that can be put on top of OMOP, and it's called Atlas. It's a UI that's used to build out more like clinical research components. So we utilize Atlas to build out our cohorts to put into essentially FHIR. So we're filtering the cohort through OMOP, which is through their database, and then pushing it out to FHIR essentially. So that's where it comes in. And because when you do that, you'll build out cohort IDs, which essentially are the same thing as the patient ID. It makes it easier to work with FHIR and push it out to XML format.
All right, thanks. Next question. Do you publish OMOP FHIR profiles, including any constraints required to be able to map to the OMOP data tables?
No, we haven't yet, but that's something that we could definitely put on the docket to do. Great question. That's
great. That's also a very, very clear answer. You can try to work around, but it's sometimes as clear as get. All right. Hi, thanks for the expose. I'm interested in getting specific examples where OMOP allow things that FHIR doesn't. Let's see. Oh, wait, the question ends there. I will just go slightly on to the next one, and hopefully Theo is able to maybe add a bit to his questions. Sorry. Is it typically one way from FHIR to OMOP?
No. I guess it's kind of a mixed bag. At first, when I got to learn more about OMOP on FHIR, I thought it was mostly people trying to get data from OMOP to FHIR, but apparently there are a ton of use cases where a lot of people are going from FHIR to OMOP. And in those cases, it's usually more research-based, where you're trying to look at some population to see what type of behavior you can glean from that. You have like, more pharmaceutical needs as well that kind of, see, what adverse events could come, say, from a vaccine or something like that as well. So in that case, you're more looking for like, hey, how is this particular population impacted by X, Y, or Z? So in our case, looking at, patient-related data from, say, one state, and you're getting this information from, say, multiple states, then you can put it into OMOP or the OMOP database to kind of see on a grander scale, like how is the behavior of, say, COVID is functioning among those states.
All right, thanks. Theo actually added to his question that the question is less about OMOP on FHIR. I misinterpreted that, sorry, but more about what are the difference between OMOP compared to FHIR. So what does OMOP allow that you can't do with FHIR?
So we have what's called F tables in OMOP, which allows you to do more of, I guess, the I call it finagling, but the manipulation of the data from, I guess, more of a bulk. So again, this is comparing FHIR to OMOP without any other bells and whistles. Of course, FHIR has bulk FHIR, but out of the box, FHIR is more patients, or I guess individually patient-centric, versus, with ease, you can work with large populations of patients or population-based data with OMOP.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I couldn't find the mic on button. Okay, then there's another question. Just someone who is curious. Would you recommend to use OMOP on FHIR to convert FHIR DS2 to OMOP 5.x to FHIR R4?
Yeah.
All right.
We've already done it. So I mean, if you have any questions or anything about it, like, yeah, we already support the mappings from DS2 to the R4. Again, you can do just about any version combination that you like. Some parts of, some organizations may be, doing upgrades to, say, if they have an OMOP system, but not the FHIR side, because they're dependent on some other organizations to upgrade. For instance, you may be a public health agency, and if you have a FHIR server, it may be only at DSTU2 versus, like, if you're working with some other entity, they've already probably started working on R4. So.
All right, thank you very much. Actually, we ran out of time. Let me just check if there's maybe there's time for one more question. If there's another question, let me just quickly refresh the page. No, we actually went through all the questions. So thank you very much for your time. It was a great presentation, and thanks for the live Q&A. Hope you enjoyed the rest of DevDays.
Thank you.
All right, bye.